Hello there, and welcome to the Everybody Dice review of Fort, a great little card game which kind of evokes memories for me of kids' cartoons like Ed, Ed and Eddie, where food and toys are currency, and the kids on the street are marked right for bribing into helping you achieve your scheme, all for the purpose of obtaining little trinkets, in this case, a macaroni statue. But I always ask this question, and this one's no different. How does it play? Let's find out. So, what exactly is Fort? Fort is a card game, and I really would stop there, because it's not really an engine building game, neither is it really a card drafting game, despite the fact that, yes, you will actually be drafting a single card on your turn. No, Fort, at its root, is a game about prioritization and having to change your plans on the fly. You see, if you try too hard to build a very precise engine in this game, you're going to be faced with all kinds of problems because other players will be picking apart your engine over the course of the game. So what exactly do you have? You have yourself a yard. That's going to store your stuff in your inventory. It's going to track your fort level, and it also has a space at the top which you will eventually be putting cards into. Because that's the other thing you're going to start the game with. You're going to have a hand of 10 cards to begin the game with. 2 of which are going to be your best friends. You can tell they're your best friends because they've got a little star just where my fingers are there, just under there. But you're also going to go through a drafting kind of phase at the beginning of the game, where you're going to have 8 cards. You're going to choose one, hand it round the table until basically everyone ends up with 8 cards that they have picked. And then simply all you're going to do is try to do one of 2 things. You are either going to try to get your fort to reach the humbled level 5, or be the first to reach 25 points on the score track here. When one of those conditions are met, the game ends. So, what are you going to do on your turn? Well, you're only going to have 5 of these cards. They'll be shuffled into a deck. You'll have 5 in your hand, and simply all you do on your turn is pick one card and play it, and then do the actions on that card. That's basically it. Okay, so once you've actually chosen a card to play, you'll notice that there are actually 2 actions listed on it. The top one being a public action, and the bottom one being a private one. Now, should you want to take the public action, once you've done your bit, everyone else has the opportunity to play a card of the same suit. You'll notice the suit's in the top left-hand corner there over the course of the game. You get to play one of those, and you get to take the action as well. That's not good for you, right? So you may just want to take your private action. Well, there's a problem there. You see, you can't take one action... Well, you can't take both actions in part. One of them has to be completed in full on the course of your turn. So you may want to take the public action to completely fulfill it in order to actually take your private action. You see, for example, with this card here, you'll notice there are 2 toys printed on it. Take 2 toys. There's only 1 space for a toy in the inventory here, so I can't take that action until I've played the public action first. After that, I can just take 1 toy instead and pop it in there. However, there are other things you can actually do on your turn as well. Should your stuff be full, you can simply move 1 item from your stuff into your pack, should you actually have an action that allows you to do it. At that point, you've then freed up enough room to be able to take that action in full. Now, there is a limit though as to how much stuff you can actually move into your pack. So your pack is related to your fort level. Your fort level, as it moves up, you're allowed to extend the size of your pack. So in other words, you can hold as many items in your pack as your fort level plus 1. So at the beginning of the game, you're only allowed to move 1 item into your pack. Though as you move to level 1, you can then store 2 items in it. At level 2, you can store 3, and so on. Okay, so extending the size of your pack isn't the only benefit you gain from building your fort level. You'll also notice that you have this area towards the left-hand side of your player board called the Lookout. And one of the things you can actually notice on some of these cards, like for example the one we picked earlier here, that top action requires a number of suits to actually boost the effect that you're originally getting from the action on the card. You do this by discarding cards of the same suit from your hand, so maybe I'll get rid of that one, and I'll boost the effect of that. But there's another way of being able to play for that. Play for that, pay for that. And that's basically using your lookout here. So your lookout, should you take the appropriate action, is a place where you're allowed to store cards into. Once they're there, they stay there for the rest of the game. They can't be removed by another player. They can't be taken out and played in your hand again. They are stuck there for good, which is a bit of a downside. However, what it does give you is the benefit of extra suits to be able to pay for these things. So should you have a card that has multiple suits in its top left-hand corner there, you're going to want to put that into your fort to get really the most out of the lookout. You see, the lookout has the same limitations as your pack. In other words, you can only put as many cards in there as your fort level +1. Again, meaning, for example, at level 1, you can put 2 cards into your lookout. But what's even better than those is the idea of a wild suit. You see, these can act as any suit over the course of the game. If someone actually plays a card, a wild card, and takes the actions on it, the public action is actually decided by the person. So, in other words, they might say, I'm going to class this as a spade card. Then everyone has to play a spade into the table. So that's one thing that I should really mention before really talking about this. But should you put one of those into your lookout, then hey, you've then got something in your lookout that can be used as anything over the course of the game. So really, really useful to have in there. So I've put it off the lot enough now. How exactly do you level up your fort? Well, you're going to need resources. You see, these kids that help you build the fort, they need to be kept engaged, really. They need to have their hungers satiated, quite literally, by giving them pizza and toys to keep them happy. So you'll notice on your fort track, there are a number of these hexagonal kind of shapes, or I'm not sure, maybe an octagon. I haven't done my research on shapes. But you have to pay that amount of goods in order to build up to the next level of fort. So, for example, an orange shape means that you require 1 pizza for that. A blue means you require a toy, and a white one means any. It really doesn't matter. So, for example, moving up from a level 1 fort to a level 1 fort to a level 2 fort, you're going to have to pay 1 item of any kind, 1 pizza, and 1 toy. So you can take them in any combination from your stuff and your pack in order to pay for them and move up 1 fort level. Great, congratulations. That means you now have more space in your pack, in your lookout, but also you're 1 step closer to achieving your ultimate goal and 1 step closer to that macaroni statue. Okay, don't get too distracted though by trying to build your fort too much. You see, there is a second objective in the game which I mentioned earlier, which is scoring points. Should any other player reach the number 25 points over the course of the game, that also is a game-ending effect. So you may not want to get too absorbed in gaining items and building your fort up too much. One thing is the fact that your macaroni sculpture, should you win at the end of the game, is actually only worth 4 points at the end of the game. Although you do score points as well for actually building your fort. Building your fort to level 5 actually earns you 23 points. So with 27 points, you'd actually exceed that anyway. However, should someone else actually have built their fort up a bit of the way, that still puts you in dodgy territory if you decide to just build your fort all the way through. It doesn't guarantee you winning the actual game. After all, it's points at the end of the day which actually wins the game. But you see, the reason why they may not be totally focused on points is because a couple of the perks you actually get from building your fort. You see, at a level 1 fort, you actually get access to this deck of cards here. There'll be as many cards in it as the number of players +1. And what these have on them is a made-up rule. The made-up rules actually break the game for you, gives you an extra ability, and these are quite unbalanced as well. So getting there first is actually kind of a vital part of the game. You see, you want to make sure you're getting the best made-up rule for your strategy. You may not be guaranteed that it'll still be there by the time that it gets around to you building your first level fort. There is another perk as well. These ones are actually a bit more open. You're going to have 4 of these bonus conditions that you can win come the end of the game. Now, they're going to be laid out basically in front of everyone. So this is public information. So you're going to know straight away which ones are going to be good for you and which ones aren't. Again, these do seem quite unbalanced again, and could end up scoring you some major points for doing relatively little, or something that's a bit harder to get that isn't worth quite as many points. We've definitely found that over the course of playing this game. So again, you get these after you've built your second level fort, so you may want to get there as quickly as possible. So you know that basically everyone around the table will be looking to at least build a second level fort, even if they decide to go the points route and try to aim towards that instead. Okay, so now we get onto the best part of the game. That's right, I've saved the best part till last. And it's actually this little space above your board here. You see, at the end of your turn after you've played a card, you're actually going to put all your unused cards from your turn into your yard there, because they just weren't that vital to actually helping you build your next level of fort on this turn. So they've been put there to play and make use of themselves. The problem is that another kid from another yard may come round and say, oh, you're not doing anything right now. We could really use you over in our fort right now. Why don't you come and help us? And they go, and you don't see them again, which is a really frustrating part of this game. You see, at the penultimate phase of your turn, you're going to get to take a card from somewhere. That card may come from the park, which is kind of an area where 3 cards will be played face up so everyone can see what cards are available there. You may also decide to draw a card though from the deck of cards that's next to it and take one of those. Or you could do what I just said there and take a card from another player's yard. Yes, that's right. You can take a part of their engine away from them. There is a caveat though with this. You can't take a card away from your yard, and that means that playing the cards from your hand becomes really difficult. You have some really hard decisions to make here. You see, you may have a card that's really, really useful to your engine. However, on this particular turn, they're not that helpful. So you will play another card and risk losing that one, which is terrible. But you see, there is another way of being able to keep cards in your deck. Remember when I said earlier you can boost the effect of other cards by playing other cards from your hand? Those go to your discard pile, so they actually stay in your deck over the course of the game. So it creates this really interesting dynamic where you may not necessarily be playing the best card on your turn for your system to get to your end goal quickest. No, you may play a card on your turn because it allows you to discard the important cards in your hand into your discard pile, so you get to keep them for a later date. It's a really interesting dynamic because it really means you're not necessarily doing the thing that's best for you and towards working to your end goal, but you're simply doing things to preserve your deck. Like I said before, Fort is a game about prioritization and changing your plans on the fly, because you may get a hand of cards that maybe offers you crap, and you have to try and find a way to bring as many of those cards actually into your discard pile because they may be useful later on. It's what makes this card game really, really interesting. So it really sounds like I love this game. But we'll move on to the conclusion part of the video now and see if that really is the case. Which probably sounds like I'm actually going to do some sort of swerve here. But if you're expecting that, I'm afraid you're not getting one. I do love this game. In fact, it's probably one of the best releases from last year. Now, the thing that really I haven't talked about yet, because I kind of feel like it's a done thing whenever it comes to lead a game and goes without saying, is the artwork in this game. Carl Ferrin has done it again. This game looks absolutely wonderful. But it's not just about the art being wonderful. The other thing is these characters on these cards, they all have just that. They all have characters. They kind of look like they've just gathered whatever they can out of a yard sale and dressed themselves up in it. I mean, this footballer guy here with the Super Soaker, it's brilliant. It really has had a lot of thought put into it, much like Root. You see, it's not just a case of he's drawn a load of kids here. He's really thought about the kind of characters they may all be to try and fit those actions as well. It's really cool and really has to be commended there. But I mean, it's not just that. But there are criticisms about this game, and really there is one major one, which is all the use of symbology here. And I understand why companies do it. It's literally, it saves on printing lots of different language versions of lots of different products. But lots of symbols can be a little bit overwhelming for people, but I can't even really be too harsh with that. You see, they do provide you with lots of these big player aids that actually describe what all of the different symbols actually do. So that's a massive help. Absolutely brilliant stuff. But like I said, it still will probably overwhelm new players, so despite being such a simple game that's really easy to play, much like other games, like it's a similar problem that I find with Bang as well. Quite often new players into the game, despite having player aids, will still quite often be asking questions about how exactly one of these symbols actually work. It doesn't quite get the message across as well as when you have text printed on a card, for example. But that really is about the only gripe that I have with this game. But apart from that, the things about this game that I love are such things as having to keep an eye on everyone else's play state all the time. I find it really means you have to stay sharp over the course of the game, keeping an eye on what cards are available in other players' yards and whether they're going to be helpful to you or not. Knowing when to go for points and when to level up your fort. You see, leveling up your fort is probably going to be worth the most points at the end of the game, so it is still a race to get there first. However, you do have to make sure people aren't playing for points and moving up that point track quickly and potentially cutting you off at the pass. That's a really cool part of this game. But the real winner here is the fact that every decision is a hard one, and you really have to puzzle your way around how to get as many cards into your discard pile as possible while still playing actions which are useful to you. I mean, it's a nice little extra to have those bonus points and the extra rule breaking things. They are a nice little touch on the game to give you a little bit more to think about as well, on top of making these hard decisions every single turn. But if there's one thing that these games usually create, it is analysis paralysis. If you have to make a lot of hard decisions, often your turn you can be sat around really thinking too hard about things. However, in this, because other people's play state is so important, you will constantly outside of your turn be looking around and checking everything, whilst also knowing that that public action is probably coming, and it's those public actions which have seen themselves inserted way more into board games these days that keep everyone a bit more involved, because there's nothing worse than having one person taking 20 minutes just to take a simple turn. Definitely has been a problem in the past and seems to be one of these things that a lot of board game designers are really addressing these days, and Fort is one of those examples of one which does it really, really well. So it goes without saying, we fully recommend Fort. This is an absolute marvel of a game and I absolutely love it, and really evokes lots of those kind of nice memories of being a child and stuff. I wonder. Okay, so thank you for joining us in this video, and in what is quite obviously a level 04. I don't know, I'd call this a level 1. I've got some fancy lighting and a cushion. I'm sure that counts. But thank you very much for joining us all the same, and perhaps you've enjoyed it enough to give it a like or a share. Or maybe you want to subscribe to the channel. That would be awesome. We also have our social medias you can find at Everybody Dice on Twitter and at Everybody Dice Show on Instagram. If you would like to follow us on Facebook, you can find our Facebook page at facebook.com/everybodydice. And if you would like to become a patron, you can throw us $1 our way. And that would go a long way to helping us. You can find that over at patreon.com/everybodydice. There you can find stuff like our audio newsletter we do every month for our patrons, and they get to vote on videos like this as well. Basically, they get the choice of a number of board games that we do one review of each month. And Fort was the one for this month. Thank you very much for joining us. There should be some things on screen, maybe there, somewhere on the screen. Please do give them a click too and follow them through if you could, please. Thank you very much for joining us. See you next time. Bye!